Hi everyone, my name is Phyllis and I'm the owner of Mad Moody Quilting Fabrics. Today we are going to continue with our applique along block. You can get your free pattern on my website madmoodyquiltingfabrics.com, and you can download it and it will have some instructions and this layout to print out. So this is the block. The first lesson I explained to you how I prep my background fabric and the trace of pattern. I like to work with an overlay, and you'll see why. One of the reasons is if I design my own blocks, so I don't want to have any tracing marks on my background fabric, because if I make a last minute change decision, then I have some lines to get rid of. That's one of the reasons why I like working with a trace of pattern. The other reason is that I find it just a little bit more accurate to make sure that everything lines up nicely. So we're going to get things ready. Now, before I move on to the sewing, we're going to look at this pattern. So the first things I like to do is lay down temporarily with little applique pins. I use the clover ones, but you can find the magic ones. I don't know if I have any clover in stock, but I work with these little tiny things. The magic applique, there's magic applique pins. I do have those in stock, and there's tiny. They are heat resistant. I can't hit an iron with these clover ones. If I hit an iron with that would just melt and wreck my iron, whereas the magic ones are heat resistant, so you can just pin and then hit it with an iron if you feel that you need to. So, and you won't wreck your pins and you won't hurt your iron. So the second lesson, I talked about prepping fabrics, choosing and prepping your fabrics with your tracing. So you would take this pattern and you would trace this underneath with your freezer paper on top with the doll side up, and you would use a light box or on a window, and you would trace all your pieces individually, and then you would have them cut out. You can have them all cut out and ready to go. All right, so I like to place my freezer papers on top of the right side, because I do needle turn, and to see that to make sure that I line my fabrics up, I need that freezer paper on top so you can see it under the trace of pattern fabric. It is a little opaque and it is see-through, but it's not see-through enough to really gauge if you're lining things up correctly, because don't forget, this is the finished size. This freezer paper indicates the finished size, and we're going to be cutting them a little bit bigger and adding our seam allowance. So we need to make sure things are lined up. That's why I work from the top of my fabrics. Now I've only prepped what I physically need to be ready for this particular lesson. So let's get going on that. I'm just going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to bring this in. And I'm going to show you what I do to get my my bias. Now this is done on the bias, and you can see that. I think it's in lesson 2. And I just lay it down like this. Now I've pre-cut some of these, but I just lay it down, and I follow the lines on top. And then I take a little tiny pair of scissors and I cut, leaving a little bit. Don't forget, this has to go under here and here, but this leaf has to go under there. So I just make sure that they're just the right size. This one here was done early. I cut this earlier, and there you go. This I'll probably trim off and make it a little shorter, or I will add a little bit more under this one, just to make sure that everything is covered and over. Now this piece here will go under, and this piece goes under. So I have to prep these before I can sew this. Now this little barb of a bud goes under this part. So this is the first thing that I sew. Then I would sew this one, and then this leaf, and then the stem. Everything else, as you see, this goes over top to cover the raw edge of the stem, and this leaf over here, this leaf right here, goes over top to cover the raw edge of the stem. So I've prepped both of these to be the right length. And then again, this leaf will goes under this. So now let's get these situated. I'm going to get my trusty, and I have this, this is just full of little applique pins. So we're going to get this stem put in first. And I like to use this, and I will just slide it under, and then I hold this end here with my trusty little tweezers, and then I'll go in and I will pin it down, making sure that it doesn't get shifted too much. And it takes a little bit of practice to get, so that's lined up right there. It's perfect. So I'm going to go in and do the next pin. And here we go, the next pin. And the reason why I use this little pin cushion on my finger is because everything's close to my fingers. It's easy to grab it. There we go. Let's move on to the next. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to slide it a little bit more, hold it with my tweezers, grab this, and pin it down, and continue doing that till it's all put into place and I'm happy with it. And if I don't like it, I will take out the pins and start from scratch again, repinning it. There, now let me just check. See, that's not far enough over right here. This little bit here is not far enough over. So I'm just going to take, everything else is fine. I'm just going to take it. That looks better. So I just got to slide these tweezers in there to hold it in place. There we go. Hopefully this has done the trick. There we go. Let's double check that. Yes, that's perfect. Now, I can't sew that down till I put the leaf in. So I'm going to prep this one. And that's this one right here. So we're going to cut it bigger around. And I like to cut more than I maybe need. You can always cut off, but you can't add. So you do not cut, you add your seam allowance to the freezer paper shape. And all right, so now we are going to take this piece and slide it right in there. Let me just double check. Yeah, this is better. There you go. So we're going to slide it in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to situate it. And see, I don't know if you can see that. Yes, you can. So I have my tracing pattern traced on, and the freezer paper is exactly the same size as that tracing. So I know that if I lay it down there, you can see through, and that is one of the reasons why I use the freezer paper on top. But the other reason is because I don't want to have to break it out or leave a piece to pull out. I just sew around and then take the freezer paper off, and I'm not having any problems. So let me just line this up. And again, I line it up and then I hold it here with my finger. I take my tweezers and put it on top of the piece that I'm trying to position to hold it there so it doesn't move. And then I go in and I pin that down. Now, we need to get this underneath there. I just want to check again. We lay everything down and flat, and I check again to make sure I'm happy with that placement. And if it's not dead on, it's not the end of the world, because we will not have any, we have the tracing pattern on top, our pattern's been traced on the tracer pattern and not on our background. So if you're a little off, you have no worries. You won't have to try to get rid of lines or anything. So I need to get that tucked under there. So to do that, I need to remove that piece. So I'm going to go ahead and tuck it under and bring this back over and make sure that it's all lined up. Yes, it is. Now you'll see that I have a little piece that is sticking out. We will deal with that when we get to sewing this down. So that is how I start placing my pieces, and hopefully you will see that. So next lesson I will show you how I prep this piece, and I will have a little bit, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and prep some of this piece now and do maybe this sewing. No, I think that's it. Anyways, let me put this one in to show you. That's this piece here. And I'm just going to turn this around here. And I'll do a couple more pieces. So let's just slide this in here. Now just make sure everything is lined up. I make sure these edges are, the points on all four sides are lined up. And then I start placing. So I'm just going to move that over there like that. So this is not so hard. It's quite easy. There we go. Now you could place your leaves first and not the stem, but I always start with the stems. I don't know why, but I always do. And actually this piece here can be trimmed down, but I will finish placing this. Here we are. There, and this needs to, so this one doesn't get to, this one does not need to be trimmed down, but there we go. And that looks very good. That looks very good. Now I want to place this piece in. And I'm going to take the time to do some sewing there. So I'm cutting it just a little bit bigger. And that goes waist. And I'm just going to slide this in underneath this. And my tracing is not perfect, but that's okay. That's gonna be okay, I think. Actually, I think I'm gonna bring it down just a tad more. Maybe not. I'm gonna leave it like that. And we're gonna get pin ready. And we're gonna go under. Now I hold it with my tweezers. And then I go ahead and get this pinned. And I'm going to check to make sure it didn't shift on me. No, oh, that looks good. So now we're going to sew this up. And I need to get some purple thread. So I think this is a nice purple. to go with this. Yep, that's good enough. And we're going to get this sewn up. Normally I have these threads ready to go, but I wasn't planning to do any sewing on this one. I was just going to do some placing. But here we go. Now, I'm going to explain the stitch, applique stitch, with a little bit more detail. So let me make sure I'm in the frame, and we're going to get this ready to turn. Here we go. So I'm going to, and I turn to the paper. I turn my raw edge with my needle under to the paper. And then I come up from behind and I sew, I make my first stitch. I go straight across down into the background, come up a little further along in the purple fabric, and we continue like that. I do a couple of stitches. I only turn enough to, I don't try to turn everything, because if you do that, you're going to not be able to get it nice. It takes practice, ladies and gentlemen. So take your time to turn. I will cover this a little bit more in detail the next lesson, but here we are. So that's the start of prepping your papers and your pieces, and that's the start. So I would sew this piece down first, then I would sew this piece, then this, then I would do this. So next lesson we'll continue. I will go further in detail with the actual applique stitch that we use, and we'll talk more about prepping each little piece as we go. So I hope that this is interesting. I hope you will follow along and continue. Like I said, you can get your pattern for free on my website, and happy quilting. See you next time. Bye.